Staying then with news here in France, over the weekend there were violent clashes between police and environmental protesters who are demonstrating against the construction of reservoirs. Charlotte Hughes tells us more.
The remains of these vehicles show the scale of violence of Saturday's demonstration in Sainte-Soline. 4 police vans were set alight. Protesters threw petrol bombs. In response, police fired rubber bullets and water cannons. Dozens of people were injured, several of whom are in a critical condition.
We didn't come here for that. We have our opinion and we came to express it. But when we arrived, we were faced with criminals. Some of them were very young, some were a lot older.
What shocked me was seeing young people injured. One lost an eye, another one lost a toe.
Campaigners were protesting against the construction of reservoirs, which can be used by farmers for irrigation when droughts occur. They claim that the project would limit locals' access to water and harm France's valuable wetland areas, which are home to a range of wildlife. France's Interior Minister insists that the construction will go ahead as planned.
This project has been legally approved and it's important for our farmers, who we need to support.
The 3,200 officers who were deployed ahead of Saturday's protests will remain in the area indefinitely. An inquiry has been opened to determine how those in a critical condition sustained their injuries.
Well, let's talk a bit more then about the environmental impact of this story with Shirley Sitbon from our science desk. And Shirley, some farmers say these reservoirs are short-term but necessary to irrigate in times of drought. Others say they'll worsen water shortages. Just talk us through these positions for and against the reservoirs.
Well, let's look at the way it's structured. That way we can understand all arguments. Well, these water reservoirs for irrigation are very large. We can see their structure with this right there. You can see that the water is pumped from water tables, superficial ones. And it is used later during the summer to irrigate farmland. And basically, it saves some of the crops that would have been damaged. It's not used in a hazardous way. It's really thought out. People who use it, the few farmers who use it, say the idea is basically to save the crops and to use as little water as possible. But still, they need that water. Otherwise, well, their whole crops will go to waste, as it happened in previous years. But this is made with plastic. The first thing that is wrong with it, for those who are opposed to the plan, is that it's bad for the biodiversity. The second thing is because there's no water, it's very dry beneath. The second thing is that the water that is there is evaporated up to 60%. They say those who are against it. Of course, those who use these water reservoirs say that figure is far too high. The quality of the water is also not as good as rainwater is. So there's a whole discussion about the consequences of these reservoirs. What people who are opposed to this say is that basically the whole idea behind this is that a small number of farmers who have large farms will use this, while all the other farmers who have small exploitations, small and little land, well, they can't use this, and they'll have less water in the ground for themselves, so they'll suffer more from water shortages. And they say, well, this presses on with this system of massive use of water by some farmers for export of things like corn. So basically, cattle can eat, and they say the whole system has to be revised so less water is used.
And what alternatives then are there, Shirley, to these water reservoirs?
Well, sometimes there's smaller reservoirs using rainwater and not water that is pumped in the water tables. And that's one option. The other option is changing the whole system, as we've said before, growing crops that don't use as much water, that can resist difficult situations. There is irrigation possible, but not in large quantities. Or also the drop-by-drop system, where we know that the exact quantity of water needed for every plant. So this is being used. Of course, many farmers, many scientists say that the water needs to be kept inside the ground because that's where it's protected, that's where it's better, that's where it does not evaporate. This needs to be protected.
Now, Shirley, in the report we played a bit earlier, we heard about the anger of activists, about their concerns. Other activists are working on solutions at the same time. Now, scientists interestingly say that the way that people react to climate change resembles the way that we face hardship in general. Can you explain to us a bit about that?
Yes, well, I imagine you talk to many people about climate change. When you talk to some protesters, for example, or even people in the street, many are upset by this, worried, concerned, angry sometimes with political leaders, with previous generations. And some people deny climate change exists, say that it's just a thing that will be reversed. And others find solutions and are there trying to be constructive. And some scientists say, well, this resembles a curve, a change curve, which is something that has been identified many decades ago, and which happens, it's a process that happens to people who go through hardships. We can see this curve right now to see the different situations, different emotions and reactions that we live through. Oh, that's the French one, sorry. So basically...
Do some fast translation there, Shirley.
Yeah, so basically there's denial, anger, real depression, and then going back into basically trying to find solutions. The idea is to not stay in that situation of bad emotions and trying to find solutions and bring people to that positive step, because scientists say there are many solutions out there. The idea is basically to move forward and not stay in this situation of depression, anger, distress, because often also people say the media is too much into that, showing the situation as too dire. Well, the situation is dire and complicated, but there are solutions, and scientists say basically everything is natural, anger, despair, rage even, but you can move on from that to being more useful and finding better solutions for the future.
All right, that was quite an optimistic chat about climate change. That was interesting. Shirley Sitbon.